I realized my older brother had stolen $60,000 from our parents when he was being celebrated as Son of the Year at Mom's birthday party, and they had no idea. It was a Saturday evening at our family home in Cleveland, Ohio. Mom, Linda Thompson, was celebrating her 55th birthday. The entire family was gathered around the dinner table. The center of attention was my older brother, Michael, 32, a supposedly successful entrepreneur, the pride of the family, and me, Daniel, 28, a systems administrator. I sat in the corner, quietly listening to the endless praise for the family's golden boy. Our Mikey is such a star, Mom was telling the guests. He owns his own company, drives a luxury car, wears custom suits. That's what a good education at NYU gets you. Dad, Peter Thompson nodded proudly. We invested in our firstborn wisely. He'll take care of us in our old age. Michael smiled modestly and accepted the congratulations, the picture of a perfect son fulfilling his parents' dreams. I was mentioned briefly. And Danny, well, he's good with computers, Mom added with a hint of apology. Still living in a rental, hasn't started a family. Not everyone can be as successful as Mike. I'd grown used to the comparisons. 30 years of hearing the same thing. Why can't you be more like your brother? IT's not a real profession. In our family, there was only one son worth being proud of. Michael spoke confidently about his business ventures, international contracts, and plans for expansion. He used all the right jargon, impressed everyone with numbers. The room hung on his every word. Then his phone vibrated with a notification. The screen lit up, and I caught a glimpse of a bank alert. Past due payment, $9,800. Please contact us to settle your debt. That was a massive number, but what hit me harder was the fact that a supposedly wealthy entrepreneur couldn't cover his bills. If Mike was as successful as he claimed, why did he have delinquent debts? If he was making the money he bragged about, why couldn't he pay off $10,000? And more importantly, how did he afford the luxury car, designer clothes, and dinners at high-end restaurants? Something didn't add up. As a sysadmin, spotting logical inconsistencies is my job. The party went on. Michael accepted gifts, Mom cried tears of joy, and I kept thinking about that bank notification. My gut told me something darker was hiding behind the glamorous facade. And it was just the tip of the iceberg. To understand how I knew something was off, you have to understand our family. Michael was born first, an attractive, energetic child. I came 4 years later, a quiet boy who preferred books to loud games. The difference between us was obvious from the start. Mike was a natural leader. I was the introverted kid with building kits. By school age, the gap widened. Michael was a straight-A student, class president, team captain, teacher's favorite. I was an average student, fascinated by electronics and computers. Why can't you be more like your brother? Was the soundtrack of my childhood. My parents didn't understand my interests. They called it a phase. After high school, Michael got into NYU to study business. The family was ecstatic. They even sold their vacation cabin to cover tuition. Mom took on extra work. Dad picked up double shifts. All their energy went into Michael's elite education. I enrolled in a local tech college for software development. At least you won't be a deadbeat, Dad said flatly. Michael spent 5 years in New York, coming home like a conqueror. He talked about city life, internships, connections. My parents hung on every word. I graduated top of my class in IT, got a solid job as a sysadmin, and made good money. But to my parents, it wasn't a real job. Computers aren't serious work. Real men build businesses, Dad used to say. In 2019, Michael came back with big plans. I'm starting a consulting firm, he said, helping companies streamline operations with management systems. It sounded impressive. Within a month, he had a luxury car. 2 months later, a new wardrobe. 3 months, an office downtown. My parents were beaming with pride. This is what a real investment in education looks like, Mom gushed. Mike earned more in a year than we did in a lifetime. Michael treated us to expensive dinners, handed out generous gifts, and talked about massive contracts. He was their proof that all the sacrifices were worth it. I, meanwhile, got promoted to senior sysadmin. My salary grew, but it still didn't count to them. Danny just sits at a computer all day. Mike runs a real business, Mom told her friends. I wasn't jealous. But it stung how my own achievements meant so little. Michael was their trophy son, living proof that they'd chosen the right child to invest in. But all of it, his success, his lifestyle, was built on lies. The day after Mom's birthday, I couldn't stop thinking about that bank notification. A man supposedly managing millions couldn't repay a $10,000 debt? On Monday at work, instead of focusing on servers, I launched my own investigation. Being a sysadmin has its perks. I know where to look for information that most people can't access. First, I checked Michael's company registration. His consulting firm, NextGen Solutions, was indeed registered in 2019. That was true. But the deeper I dug, the stranger things got. The listed office address? A virtual office service. Just a mailbox to make the business look legit. No employees were listed in IRS databases. Revenue for the previous year? $0. On paper, the company existed, but in reality, it was just smoke. Then I dug into Michael's social media. His Instagram painted a picture of a luxury lifestyle. Expensive restaurants, high-end hotels, designer outfits. But when I analyzed the details, cracks began to show. Business trip photos were taken on weekends. Meetings happened in casinos and nightclubs. GPS tags showed locations unrelated to business. Arcades, betting parlors, poker rooms. The most alarming discovery was in the public court records. Over the past year, 4 lawsuits had been filed against Michael over unpaid debts. The amounts ranged from $600 to $4,000. All filed by shady lenders and payday loan companies. It was becoming painfully clear. My successful brother was surviving on borrowed money from the most dangerous lenders. But the worst was still to come. Through a colleague at the bank where I manage IT systems, I learned that our parents had withdrawn large amounts from their retirement savings multiple times over the last 2 years. Officially, these were investments in Michael's business ventures. The total amount? Over $36,000. More than half their life savings. That evening, I visited them under the pretense of helping set up a new smart TV. I gently asked about their investments in Mike's company. Mom beamed with pride. Our Mikey is so responsible. Always pays us back, with interest. Just last month he borrowed $3,000 for an urgent contract and returned $4,000. He's a real businessman. Dad nodded. Better than any savings account. We decided to invest in him instead of banks. The returns are incredible. I realized they truly believed in Michael's financial success. He would occasionally pay them back with extra, enough to keep the illusion alive. It was a textbook pyramid scheme, just on a family scale. New loans covered old debts and interest. The rest funded his extravagant lifestyle and debt payments. But the most devastating discovery was yet to come. When I checked their latest account activity, I saw their retirement fund was almost drained. Less than $24,000 remained from the original $60,000, and Michael had just asked for another $5,000 to expand operations in a neighboring state. It was time to uncover the whole truth. I spent the next 2 weeks playing detective, using every tool and connection I had in the IT world. What I uncovered shattered me. Michael wasn't just reckless. He was systematically bleeding our parents dry, hiding behind stories of business success. Through another colleague who services banking systems across 3 major financial institutions, I got a complete financial map of Michael's activity for the past 3 years. What I saw next was beyond anything I expected. Michael had 14 credit cards open across different banks with a combined limit of over $25,000. Every single card was maxed out. In addition, he had taken out multiple personal loans using forged income statements. The supposed proof of salary was obviously fake, since his company officially paid him nothing. But the most cynical part of it all was how he paid off the debts. Each time the banks began demanding repayment, Michael went back to our parents with yet another story of an urgent business emergency. Sometimes he needed money for equipment tied to a big contract, sometimes to prepay suppliers, and sometimes to bribe officials for landing a government contract. Our parents, blinded by faith in their entrepreneur son, dipped into their savings every time. Michael used a small portion of that money to make minimum payments on the most pressing debts. The rest? He spent it at casinos. Yes, casinos. A detailed analysis of his bank activity showed that around 70% of all the money he received went straight into gambling. My brother was a compulsive gambler. Underground poker clubs, sports betting, legal roulette tables. He gambled everywhere, constantly losing. And when he won, he immediately bet it all again. Through a private investigator I had once helped with cybersecurity work, I uncovered even more disturbing details. Michael wasn't just in debt to banks. He owed dangerous people. You can reason with banks, restructure loans. But these weren't bankers. He was indebted to a known enforcer working for Anthony, the Bear Marquez, a man with deep ties to organized crime. The amount? Roughly $18,000, and the interest was compounding weekly. There had already been reminder visits. After one of them, Michael wore sunglasses for 2 straight weeks and claimed he'd fallen off a bike. But the most terrifying discovery came when I accessed his phone one evening. He had left it charging at our parents' place. Michael had mortgaged our parents' house. Not sold, mortgaged. He took out a high-risk loan for $155,000 from a shady microfinance firm operating out of Florida. The contract was for 3 months, at 30% monthly interest. My parents had signed the documents, thinking they were co-signing a low-interest business loan backed by property. In truth, they had put their only home at risk. I spent the entire evening studying the contract. The terms were predatory. Even 1 day of late payment triggered a 5% penalty on the full debt. After 30 days of default, the lender had the legal right to take the matter to court and seize the house for repayment. There were less than 4 weeks left before the loan matured. And Michael didn't even have enough money to cover the next minimum payment. That's when the full scale of the disaster hit me. Our parents hadn't just lost their savings. They were on the brink of total financial ruin. The house they had lived in for over 30 years, the house where they raised both their sons, was now one late payment away from being auctioned off. And Michael? He was still parading around as a successful businessman, planning to ask them for even more money. I couldn't concentrate at work anymore. My co-workers noticed my distraction, but I couldn't tell anyone about the private hell unfolding at home. Any day now, our parents might make a decision that would destroy them financially. Michael had mastered the art of manipulating them, tugging at their parental pride, their belief in his success, their instinct to help their child in difficult times. On Friday night, I got a message in the family group chat. Hey fam, I'll be over for dinner tomorrow night. Got some big news about a new project, and a little proposal for a family business. Think you'll love this opportunity. I knew then, this was his final con. He was coming for the last of their money, dressing it up as a business deal. It was time to act. Saturday, 7 p.m. Family dinner at our parents' home in Cincinnati, Ohio. Michael arrived in a new suit, with a sleek leather briefcase and his trademark confident smile. My parents had prepared a full feast, expecting wonderful news from their golden boy. I sat in the corner, my laptop open. I had gathered everything I needed over the past 2 weeks. It was time to tear off the mask. Mom, Dad, Michael began with flair, opening his briefcase like a magician about to unveil a miracle. I've just received an offer that's going to change all our lives. He paused for effect. A major corporation from New York wants to launch a regional office here in Ohio. They're offering me a managing director position. $4,000 a month base pay, plus a cut of the profits. Mom gasped with joy. Dad beamed. But, Michael continued, they need a good faith deposit of $25,000. Standard practice in corporate America, to show you're serious. I couldn't stay silent anymore. Mike, I said calmly, can I see the documents for this offer? He looked startled for just a second, but quickly regained his swagger. Danny, come on. You don't understand business. These are complex contracts. Over your head, really. Our parents nodded in agreement. Of course their younger son didn't grasp big things. Okay, I said, turning my laptop to face them. Then let me show you something I do understand. Data and documentation. Slide 1. A chart showing every transaction from my parents' accounts over the last 3 years. Mom, Dad, I said gently, Do you know you've sent Michael a total of $55,000 during this time? Dad frowned. That can't be right. We helped him out, sure, but not that much. I pointed to the screen. Here's every transfer. $2,500 in January 2022, $4,000 in March, $6,000 in June. Each time for a different business emergency. Michael tried to interrupt. Danny's just jealous of my success. He's trying to drive a wedge between us. Yes, I borrowed money, but I always paid it back. That's true, I nodded, clicking to the next slide. But here's what's interesting. Every repayment came after another loan. A classic Ponzi scheme. New money covers old debts and interest. Slide 3. Michael's bank records. 14 credit cards, all maxed out. Over $40,000 in outstanding consumer loans. Mom went pale. Michael, what is all this? He tried to stay calm. These are working loans, standard for running a business. Then explain this, I said, bringing up a spending breakdown. 70% of your transactions are at casinos, sportsbooks, and poker rooms. Your company has officially reported zero income. You're spending thousands a month on gambling. Michael's composure cracked. This is fake. Danny faked all of it. I thought you might say that, I replied, dialing a number. I put it on speakerphone. Hi, this is Citizens Bank Support. Please enter or say the card number you're calling about. I read out the digits from one of his cards. The voice on the other end responded. Your current balance is $6,230, and your account is 38 days past due. My parents sat in stunned silence. But the worst was still coming. One last thing, I said, showing them the loan agreement I had pulled from Michael's phone. Michael took out a $155,000 loan against your house. 30% interest monthly. The contract expires in 3 weeks. If the payment was missed, the house would go to foreclosure. Mom screamed. Dad clutched his chest. Michael turned pale as chalk. This is temporary. I'll fix everything, he shouted. With what? I asked calmly. You owe $180,000 to loan sharks. One of them, Anthony Marquez's guy, already beat you up for being late. Our parents lost their savings. The house is mortgaged. And you came here tonight to squeeze out the last of their money, dressing it up as some fake New York business deal. I displayed screenshots of his texts with debt collectors, photos from casinos, and chats with betting platforms. Dad slowly stood up, breathing heavily. Michael's son, how could you? Michael collapsed into a chair, no longer even trying to explain. 30 years of lies and illusions unraveled in less than 30 minutes. The family's golden boy was exposed as a fraud and a gambling addict. What do we do now? Mom whispered. I closed the laptop. I'm taking responsibility now. First thing, we save the house. But that was only the beginning of rebuilding. 3 months later, everything was different. Michael moved out of our parents' house that same night. They packed his belongings and left them outside the front door. Then they changed the locks. I haven't seen him since. He checked himself into a gambling addiction rehab clinic in Denver, Colorado. He's paying for treatment himself, working as a warehouse loader. No more suits, no more scams. We saved the house. I took out a personal loan for the full debt, backed by my future earnings. I bought the deed back from the shady microfinance company. They agreed to a lump sum payoff with no penalties, probably realizing it was better to get paid now than drag it through court. Now I pay about $400 per month for the next 5 years. It's manageable with my salary. For the first time in 30 years, my parents looked at me not as the quiet one, or the backup plan, but as a grown man they could depend on. Mom cried and apologized. Daniel, forgive us. We treated you so unfairly all these years. Dad, who'd always dismissed my IT career as a hobby, now proudly tells neighbors. Our younger son saved us. Turns out, my computer skills are a real profession. My parents started asking about my projects, taking interest in my work, celebrating my promotions. Then something amazing happened. My company offered me the position of IT director. After the crisis, I had used my skills to help the finance team trace a contractor who was trying to embezzle funds. That exposed fraud led to massive savings. And leadership took notice. My salary nearly doubled. Now, I'm the one they're proud of. Neighbors who used to admire Michael's flashy lifestyle, who pitted our parents for having such an average second son, now knew the truth. Some even admitted they'd always been suspicious of how fast Michael got rich. Mom no longer downplays my achievements. Dad even wants to introduce me to some of his friends who have daughters around your age. Financially, we've stabilized. Of the original $65,000 my parents had saved, about $13,000 remains. Not much, but far from total bankruptcy. I helped manage their budget and invested the remaining money in safe, conservative assets. 5 years from now, once the mortgage is paid off, we'll start rebuilding their retirement fund. Then something unexpected happened. A year later, Michael returned from rehab. Thinner, gray-haired, eyes dim. He was nothing like the confident businessman he once pretended to be. He asked to meet, through Mom. We talked in the kitchen. The same place where I'd destroyed his web of lies. Danny, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, he said quietly. But I want to try and repay something. Anything. I work as a mechanic now, at a local auto shop. I make $400 a week. I'll give $100 a month to Mom and Dad until I've repaid every cent. He was serious. I could tell. Gambling hadn't just destroyed our family's finances, it had destroyed him. Our parents agreed to limited contact. Michael visits once a month for family dinner. He talks about work, his treatment, and his struggle to stay clean. There's no gold watch or designer shoes anymore. Just a man trying to rebuild. As for me, everything changed. I married Natalie, a colleague from the QA department, who always valued my quiet reliability. My parents adore her and are already dropping hints about grandchildren. We bought a 2-bedroom condo in a quiet neighborhood, my first real home. At work, I was invited to become a partner in a cybersecurity startup. Turns out, my mix of financial analysis and sysadmin skills is rare and valuable. Now I help other companies protect themselves from the same kind of fraud that almost destroyed us. I've realized something important. Real success isn't about fancy suits or luxury cars. It's about being someone others can count on. My parents finally saw that their boring, responsible younger son had always been worth more than the charming illusion of the older one. Sometimes, quiet reliability is worth more than flashy success. Yeah.